Hello and welcome to the channel. This is the second episode and the hidden leaf has lost its purpose until a mishap. The Hiraishin seal pulls Tobirama back into Naruto's era. He's not about to let Hashirama's dream be trampled, even if it means burning the village to the ground. Please like and subscribe for more epic twists. Now, let us begin. It must be orange, Tobirama informed the store owner stoically. Naruto was nodding fervently at his side, somewhat hiding behind his leg. The young man looked a bit lost, looking between the man from history to the demon-not-demon child. Saru had rescinded the S-class silence order on the Jinchuriki secret, releasing an official statement about how Naruto was a hero for jailing the Kyuubi and keeping it from attacking Konoha. It did absolutely nothing to fixing this whole mess he'd made around the child, but it was a first step. At least Saru had been smart enough to not exert such blanket executive power and order punishment on any who harm or mean Naruto ill will. As it was, Tobirama took no pleasure in the sour expressions on most adults' faces and the uncertainty on the faces of the younger generation. It took more than a statement and the revelation of a long-hidden truth to ease, let alone erase years of hatred and habit. But rather than tempt himself with the project of fixing all of that, he gave himself a much easier task: furnishing their new home. A week into living at the Senju compound, and Tobirama was a bit exhausted of shopping for things and items, but his sprout seemed to get a thrill out of interior decorating. And out of the color orange. Not that Tobirama could blame him a bit for that. Learning that his parents were the yellow flash and the red-hot habanero just gave the boy more love for the color he already liked. But now Tobirama was seeing more and more of the bright, headache-inducing color. "We have a few paintings with that color," the store owner said, and Tobirama felt his eyebrow twitch. "Wonderful. 2 paintings, training weights and weapons, books, and incense sealed away for ease of travel." Tobirama happily sank into a corner booth of a dango shop that had been around in his own time. He sipped herbal tea while Naruto ate probably more dango than he should let the boy have, but it was a good day and he couldn't refuse a sweet tooth. He listened absently as the boy rattled on about trap and prank ideas that seals could be used in, and then smiled fondly as the boy used bastardized terms to describe the seal components he'd use. The boy understood the parts of the seal and their proper terms, even if his reflexive vocabulary had him using different terms. Tobirama could speak the technical terms and Naruto would know what he was talking about, and that was all he asked. And if there was the added benefit of speaking of a bloodline craft in code while in public, then all the better. Meanwhile, he kept track of the other shop occupants. They were in a shinobi part of the village, so it was quiet and the atmosphere calm and even. They got more than a few looks and hushed conversations, but they were mostly left alone. Naruto yawned and Tobirama weighed his chakra on the boy a bit more, giving him an embrace via chakra. The boy stretched his arms over his head and chewed on a dango stick. "Time to head home?" Tobirama inquired, already finishing his tea. The boy blinked hard before pouting. "No," he whined. He pouted harder when Tobirama made a disapproving tongue click. "No," he muttered. "But I could use a nap," Tobirama admitted, honestly feeling a bit weary. Normally he was sequestered away in his office or his lab instead of being out and about and dealing with people. People were exhausting. "If I take a nap, would you want to feed the koi?" The boy immediately perked up. Tobirama had cared for and absolutely spoiled his collection of koi from the time he was a child to just before his jump in time. He had full faith that Mito took care of his koi, and he'd been afraid that his koi had perished in the intermittent years due to the fact that living things couldn't be preserved under stasis seals. But, when he'd checked, most of his koi had survived, and there were koi he didn't recognize as well, either spawn or newly bought additions. Either way, he was happy the creatures had survived, and Naruto had been absolutely floored to find fish almost as big as him, claiming he wanted to ride one. Tobirama had almost suggested finding the koi fish summoning contract before he returned to his senses. His sprout seemed happy feeding the koi and fattening them up, and then also sitting with the ancestral tree. Tobirama hadn't invaded on the boy's time in the clan garden and made sure he didn't overhear any of what the boy said, but he could feel the happy bubbles and fizzing bliss in his chakra when he was there. K. Naruto chirped, sliding down from his seat. Tobirama clicked his teeth and mock growled when a tiny hand grabbed the last dango stick from his plate, but Naruto just growled back and darted for the door. Tobirama took his time filling out the banknote before stiffening when he felt a present suddenly appear in front of his sprout. Familiar or no, that had been intentional. Inu and I. My name is Kakashi, the Jonin drawled, tipping his chin down to see the boy that had run into his legs. You can say that, right? Hataki-san, Tobirama greeted as he exited the shop, folding his hands into his sleeves. He tilted his head and peered at the man, taking in the slightly agitated sparks and low simmering anger of the young man's chakra. How are you? Kakashi blinked slowly at him, hands shoved deep into his pockets. Naidem-sama. I'm well. Yourself? The same. Tobirama thought for a moment before rolling his shoulders. Naruto and I were about to return home. Would you care to join us for some tea? Naruto bounced and poked the other man in the side with his finished dango stick. The other stolen stick of dango was already halfway finished. Yeah, he cried, muffled by the food in his mouth. Ave tea. Eyes goo, B-I-E-I. Naruto. The boy blinked at the chastising tone before Tobirama elaborated. Don't talk with your mouth full. It's rude and you spit on people. Naruto blushed and clapped a hand over his mouth, scanning Kakashi for said spit. His apology was mostly unintelligible behind his hands. Apologies, Tobirama repeated, more formally. He's merely excited to show someone his homework. He's been working hard on decorating his room and the house. Oh. Kakashi hummed, looking down to the young boy. Is that so? Naruto nodded quickly, bouncing again. Well, my schedule is usually so full. Tobirama was curious when he felt the cub's chakra still in thought. Physically, Kakashi played a game of words with a pleading, begging child. Because he was watching closely, he felt the gleeful twist of spite. Something that had the Senju bracing until Kakashi heaved a great big sigh. If it's at Senju-sama's request, then I guess I must. Naruto cheered while Tobirama thought. The off-duty Umbu was obviously here on some kind of task, so his reluctance wasn't aimed at him or Naruto. Two blue eyes and one gray eye looked at him expectantly. He felt the reflexive need to be obtuse and not make the request, but he was curious now. Hataki-san, please come have tea with us, he asked evenly. The lone gray eye curved into an exaggerated smile. Why, of course. Lead the way. It was a bit of a walk from one side of the village to the compound, but every minute of it was spent with Naruto chattering away about anything and everything and Kakashi gamely following along. His interest even peaked when he realized Naruto was talking about seals, though the oldest was secretly amused at his confusion over Naruto's terms. Maybe not so secretly if that baleful glance he got was anything to go by. As they approached the outer boundary of the compound, Naruto ran ahead with a yell and then abruptly disappeared from sight, sound, and sense. Kakashi didn't look surprised at all, nor did he flinch when Tobirama put a hand on his shoulder as they crossed the boundary and kept it there until they were through the gates. So this is the Senju compound, the Hataki mused, waving when Naruto paused, then jumped and waved further down the lane before vanishing around the corner. Tobirama nodded. Naruto and I stay at the clan head house. It was on the tip of his tongue to ask about the other's clan compound, but he recalled that he had not felt another Hataki in the village since coming here. He had only sensed the cub and he never once went to the Hataki clan compound. Instead of asking, he warned, please forgive my nephew's enthusiasm if he takes you through our gardens. He's quite pleased with his work in them. The other laughed lowly and his shoulders dropped an impressive amount into a relaxed slouch. No trouble whatsoever. The longer the better. Normally such a darkly pleased glint in chakra and gaze would set him on edge, but he had a strong hunch that any malintent was aimed at someone else. Still, He kept a close eye on the pair as Naruto did drag him to every plant and stream and pond, making sure Kakashi didn't try to leave behind any seals or wander somewhere he shouldn't. The Senju compound was still home to troves of scrolls, wealth, and weapons. As the pair darted around the clan grounds, Tobirama slipped off the Engawa to crouch on his heels. He pushed his fingers into the rich dark earth and channeled his chakra down into the ground, spreading it out like a ripple. The trees immediately surrounding the house swayed and rustled, responding to his prodding chakra. He kept a careful eye on Kakashi's and Naruto's chakra, but turned a good portion of his attention to stretching his sensing range to its limit. It had been Hashirama a couple years before his death that had helped Tobirama develop an improvement for his innate ability. It had been such an innocuous question from his ninja after he'd listened to Tobirama mutter about some enemy nin flitting around the boundary of his senses like irritating flies. Why don't you ask the trees for help? With care, he feathered his chakra against the nature chakra lying like dormant fountains in the trees, and waited until it responded to his coaxing. If he were to believe trees were actually sentient and had come kind of way to communicate in a way he could understand, then he'd tell himself the trees gave him a welcome almost akin to a chakra hug. But trees were trees and he was not his ninja. So he used the reservoirs of nature chakra in the trees as leaping points, cutting back on his own chakra expenditure and allowing him to increase his sensing range by nearly a factor of 10. He frowned as he perused the chakra presences of a small civilian village 2 days' run from the village, examining them closely for the signature of his grandniece. Nothing. He moved on to the next village, examining the roads and surrounding forest as he shifted his senses. But search as he might, he could not find Tsunade anywhere in the land of fire nor its immediate surroundings. It was possible she was elsewhere in the land, simply beyond his senses. Or it was possible she had passed. He hoped not and reasoned that from what information he'd gathered from her records, she was a formidable opponent. Tobirama returned his focus and attention back to himself and the village, reflexively double-checking the positions of chakras he cared about. Naruto had inevitably taken the newcomer over to the ancestral tree and Tobirama was pleased at the awe and reverence along with a healthy dose of uncertainty that colored Kakashi's chakra. If things hadn't changed drastically, the Hatake clan was also an old clan and understood the importance of an avatar. Tobirama was aware that most clans zealously guarded their avatars, but the Senju clan had always been open about their tree. Returning to the house, Tobirama set about making some tea and snacks for his sprout while thinking over the predicament that was his grandniece. He'd searched with his sensing periodically for the past 2 weeks now. If he didn't have confirmation of her health within the next 2 weeks, he'd see about sending out his summons and clones to locate her. Naruto eventually toddled back to the main house, yawning and rubbing his eyes. He kicked off his sandals and grunted as he climbed up the high Engawa. The trip to the actual step too much to do, apparently. Tobirama pulled the thick, plush pillow to his side and Naruto collapsed onto it with a sigh, tuckered out and finally ready for a nap. Kakashi strolled over in the slippers Tobirama had left out for him. The stories about the Senju gardens do them no justice, Senju-sama, he praised, falling more than sitting to a spot at the kotatsu. Naruto giggled as Tobirama shifted his pillow so he was at least half under the warm table. We take pride in our gardens and do our best to honor our roots. And please call me Tobirama, he demurred, reaching to pour one of his more bitter brews. He had a feeling Kakashi wasn't one to enjoy sweets like himself or his nephew. He poured for his guest first, who was polite enough to wait for him to have his own tea ready before drinking. As they sipped and Naruto slipped deeper into sleep, they made small talk. Kakashi informed him of how missions were usually looking and what to expect if he rejoined the roster. They debated economics, and puzzled over the natures of some jutsus and how to possibly improve them. It was a pleasant conversation, Tobirama thought. Would you like to stay for dinner, Kakashi? He invited, setting down his cup and propping his chin on his hand. He smothered his own yawn. Warm tea, good conversation, and social exhaustion were making him relaxed and ready to nap. The young man sighed and leaned back on his hands. I wish I could. Tobirama lazily closed his eyes. Are you finally ready to speak of the task you were given? Kakashi hummed lowly. It was so low that to Tobirama's trained and conditioned hearing it edged near a growl. He slitted an eye open and sent the other a narrow look. The cub of the wolf clan tilted his chin to the side and up in apology. The Konoha elders have sent a summons for you. They've taken issue with some of the paperwork you filed. He's had a clone or two handling a bit of paperwork on the side. He frowned, trying to recall what had been processed and approved and what was still pending. His own death certificate had been found faulty, his citizenship and his rights restored. The Senju clan no longer had the status of extinct and the clan compound was listed with him as the owner. Which left only two processes left in the works. Which one? He asked before sighing. Or is it both? The elders haven't completely gone senile, Kakashi drawled, his chakra once again darkening and growing heavier with his negative feelings. Tobirama had to admire the shinobi for feeling so much, but not letting it physically affect him. They know to pick their battles with you. I believe the topic they wished to discuss with you was the matter of your heir. Tobirama would have preferred if they decided to take issue with him resuming his title as clan head. But these were his old students, so of course they knew how to push his buttons. The ugly curl of poisonous fury that cut him, it was so sharp, rose up again. He found himself clenching his jaw against the resurgence of the dark feeling. The past week and a half had lulled him a bit into a more relaxed mood, turning his attention to more positive focuses. Making a home for his sprout and formally welcoming him into his clan had done good for him. But now he was being called back to work. His eyes narrowed out into the middle distance. He bet his students hoped to catch him off guard, but if they thought they could pull one over him of all people, then they were sorely mistaken. Letting out a slow breath, he relaxed his body again. He felt Naruto breathing against his leg, deep and even. At peace. Birds were fluttering around the compound and he could hear his streams and Sozu passing by, undisturbed by everything. He needed to be exactly that before he drowned them all. It struck him for a moment, making him wonder if this was how Madara felt before he left the village. Or possibly even worse, given that his loved one was dead rather than just threatened. Tobirama quickly shoved that thought away. And when did the venerable elders wish to speak with me? Hm. It escapes me now, Kakashi answered with such a light and uncaring tone that Tobirama raised an eyebrow incredulously. It's early evening now. I met you in early afternoon. I got my orders just before Ma. He perked up, his chakra curling in glee and amusement. Immediately. Tobirama stared for a moment before a surprised laugh escaped him. He quickly turned his mouth into his hand, muffling the sound as his shoulders shook. Kakashi's chakra lightened and gained a staticky feeling of happiness. I'm so busy, you see. Small details just slip my mind. Especially when I'm requested to have tea with our newly returned Senju clan head. Perfectly understandable, Tobirama agreed, slowly bringing himself under control once more. You are amusing, Kakashi. Thank you for that. If you say so. But the other man rose to his feet in such a reluctant and lazy manner that he was once again reminded of the Nara. Maybe he was related in some way to the clan. Now that I've delivered the summons, my job here is done. Thank you for the tea, Tobirama-san. Tobirama was admittedly not an impulsive kind of man. He liked planning, he liked taking his time to think the pros and cons of decisions and planning a couple moves ahead. So Kakashi wasn't the only one surprised when he opened his mouth and said, "Unless I offer you another job." There was a moment of quiet before the cub tilted his head curiously. A job? Normally I only take missions from the mission office. He did his best to appear gathered and collected. I assumed so, but this is a small job. Barely even AD rank. I don't want to leave my nephew alone, especially since I'll be leaving during his nap. Could I ask you to stay and keep him company until I return? You can refuse. Kakashi's shoulders dropped. You'd trust me alone with your cub in your home. I'd be leaving my summons behind as well. Uh, cats? Of course. So long as they don't eat me, sure. Have fun with the elders. The snarl of disgust Tobirama gave sent Kakashi's chakra dancing in delight. Tobirama stepped silently and surely through the darkened halls of the Hokage Tower, his eyes nearly shut as he centered himself and focused on his senses. The night was still young, but the workday was over for most. The tower was sparsely occupied with the exception of himself, his trailing Ambu, and the elders. His old students. Sarutobi, Koharu, and Hamura. They remained behind, notified by one of the Ambu that had left his detail once he'd exited the Senju compound. He closed his eyes entirely, displeased with the tense air. On principle, he should not feel threatened in his own village, but he could admit to himself that he did. His students have had a long time to seep and stew in their power and position, gathering people to their call and adding weight to their words. If it came down to a fight, a dispute, Tobirama most likely would not win. He simply did not have the sway he once did, and his dedicated students would know such. However, he also knew they could not start a confrontation, they would need him to strike first. If people found out that they tried to move against their predecessor, their sensei, without due cause, they would come under question and lose faith. Not the biggest loss, taking a hit to their power base, but he hoped it would make them think twice. Regardless of anything, he would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him off guard, and he refused to give them ammunition against himself and Naruto. He opened his eyes as he stepped once more through the door to the Hokage's office, though this time it had been left open. There were some candles lit around the room and a small lamp on Saru's desk left on. Tobirama found Saru in his place behind his desk, but now he was standing and looking out the windows at the village below. Seated together on the couch were Koharu and Hamura, both as aged as Saru, but less so. They looked softer and more pampered, enjoying the privileges of being long-surviving, wise shinobi. Tobirama welcomed the advice and wisdom of his elders, but he could spit on the idea of elders having such a huge part in any bureaucratic system. It was more trouble than it was worth. He was about to greet them, when he caught the silhouette of another figure. It was only through practiced habit that he kept any sign of surprise to himself. There was no chakra presence, and Tobirama almost convinced himself the figure was a play of the candle light on a dark wall, when he caught sight of that distinctive X scar on the man's chin. Danzo. Every single red flag Tobirama had went up in an instant. Why was his crafty, bull-headed, sly student hiding his chakra presence with a seal? It set his teeth on edge. He gathered himself as the door was shut behind him. The air was still between them all, and Tobirama made the first move as protocol dictated. Hokage-sama, he greeted lowly, drawing Saru away from the window into a half-turn. He then turned his eyes to his other students. Koharu, Hamura, Danzo. Good evening, all of you. His only kunoichi student sniffed and deigned to turn her head in his direction. Such impertinence, Senju-sama. Not only are you late, but you address your elder council so casually. One of the most important lessons he kept close to mind whenever he was at the negotiating table was to never react. It was giving in, following someone else's lead, and that was paramount to losing in negotiations. I received summons to speak with the Konoha elders over a matter of paperwork. He pursed his lips and left it unsaid how unimpressed he was that something as mundane as paperwork was why he'd been called here. Koharu harumphed and Hamura adjusted his glasses. Yes. There is an issue with your registry paperwork for your heir. Tobirama tucked his hands into his sleeves. So I've been told. The silence dragged out and the Senju felt a thread of amusement. Did they really think they could cow him into explaining himself like a guilty child? They've been left to rest on their laurels for too long. Tobirama was going to enjoy dumping them on their rears and boxing their ears. Koharu apparently ran out of patience and frowned at him. Or frowned deeper. Tobirama was going to take petty joy in telling Naruto that she was a prime example of what getting your face stuck was like. You have filed to have Naruto Uzumaki registered as the heir to the Senju clan, and that is unacceptable. More silence that Tobirama took great pleasure in letting build. Have you nothing to say? The now old woman spat and he smugly took his first victory. I am merely waiting to be informed as to what the issue is, he replied evenly. You speak as if I am already aware of this plight. The frown deepened even more. Oh my. Ignorance does not sweet you, sensei. Nor do children's insults from you, Koharu. And I am not your sensei. Please stop slandering me by falsely associating with my name and clan. Seisenju-sama, Hamura scolded, after also trying to call him by sensei. He always had been the most reasonable out of his students, if a pushover. Please cooperate. This is a matter of grave importance. I would assume so, Tobirama agreed, if you summon me. But I fail to see how paperwork could amount to such importance. Finally the shadow on the right side of the wall shifted. Danzo had never been the most patient person, and Koharu and Hamura were child's play to lead in circles and back in on themselves. If he were a betting man, he would bet that Danzo was the one to orchestrate this meeting. The issue of which you were summoned here for, the now old, decrepit, and crippled old man started to explain, is to inform you that your choice for clan heir is ineligible and we cannot accept him. The man stepped forward, cane clacking against the floor. Tobirama examined him sharply, looking for any clues or hints. Strangely enough, this aged Danzo was very different from the one in his memory. His student had been hot-tempered and reckless in his need to prove himself. Tobirama had once found it easy to read the young man, but this old man was composed and stalwart. Stoic. Consider this a courtesy, Tobirama Senju. A courtesy, he repeated in a humming, almost lyrical tone, never looking away from Danzo. You speak as if you have already made this official. Danzo nodded, his one remaining dark eye meeting his. Tobirama was reminded of a placid lake of nothing but dead water, keeping anything from growing in it. We decree it so. Tobirama raised an eyebrow. And yet I do not see a law saying that Konoha has any say in the inner workings of clans. He raised his chin and inwardly cursed himself for ever lowering it to protect his throat. You call me here to inform me that you are not pleased with my choice of heir? You waste my time. The Senju clan is still a clan of Konohagaki, Hamura reminded him, as if he'd forgotten. It must still pay respect to the village, Koharu continued. Honestly, it was like hearing petulant children. He'd taught them better on how to argue their points. Do not insult my intelligence, he huffed. We are all aware that there is no law in the village that would allow for village governance to exert their will over clan proceedings. No clan would have joined Konoha and allowed for an outside source to tell them how they should rule their clan, teach their children, and conduct their lives. He'd written those laws preventing such oversight and overreach. Sage-nosed Tobirama has tried to find a way to insert some level of censure for inner clan abuse and mistreatment. The damn Hyuga clan still gave him migraines with their insistence that their Kekkei Genkai be protected with the caged bird seal and that it wasn't a tool for slavery. Not even the uchiha ever went to such lengths to keep their eyes to themselves. You cannot claim a random child as your clan heir. Koharu protested. The boy isn't even Senju. Truly, they were trying to test him. Incorrect. Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, the chakras of Koharu and Hamura spiked in surprise, telling him that they didn't know he'd known about Naruto's parents, is a blooded Uzumaki, making him a cousin of the Senju by the marriage between Mito Uzumaki and my brother. As the boy was without clan and family, an orphan, by the inaugural establishing Senju Uzumaki Pact, it was my duty as Senju and clan head to take any bereft Uzumaki into my care. Not to mention, I have signed documents from the village granting me guardianship rights to Naruto. Danzo turned his head toward Saru and shock and disbelief filled Koharu's and Hamura's chakras. Tobirama looked between all four of them slowly. It was strange. It was obvious that Saru hadn't told anyone about signing the guardianship papers nor about giving him the information to know of his nephew's parentage. And this whole time, the one who should have the power, the Hokage, hadn't spoken a single word. Hadn't made a single move away from the windows. His students weren't united, he could tell. Danzo was the obvious head here, but was he alone? Were Koharu and Hamira working with him? Because Koharu and Hamira were quite obviously in league given their proximity to each other while Danzo stood across the room and Saru behind his desk. He recalled Saru's pressed words when he demanded an explanation during his first day in this time. It's complicated. Tobirama was starting to believe him if this snarled mess was even the beginnings of what governing the village was like today. It made him internally grimace while also sighing a bit in relief. It meant that it would be hard for them to stop fighting amongst themselves and actually do something. Like try to take Naruto away from him. Now, if they got the Uzumaki clan to come from Uzushio and claim the boy as a closer blood relative, he'd be in trouble. The Senju Uzumaki Pact was one that officially made the two clans allies beyond their long shared history of blood and family, and he'd read it a dozen times before reaching out to their sister clan to arrange his brother's marriage. He knew that the act of taking in an Uzumaki charge was meant to be a temporary measure until the Uzumaki was returned to their clan. However, Tobirama knew they would have to convince an Uzumaki to come and live in Konoha because they couldn't risk their Jinchuriki leaving the village, not even to his home village on the coast of the Land of Fire. But given that the Senju copy of the pact was still sitting in the Senju archives, he knew they were not aware of the finer details of it. He would also bet that if the Uzumaki clan or Uzushio itself were made aware of Naruto's previous living conditions and treatment, they would take the child back, by force and war if needed. Tobirama would not stop them, but he also would not leave Naruto's side. It would be more difficult to reform Konoha if he was on the coast, but he imagined he could do it still. Danzo looked back to him. Any agreement you had with the Uzumaki clan is null and void. Tobirama was lining up to rail the man for trying to control even more of the Senju clan, let alone a clan affiliated with another hidden village, when he continued. Uzushio Bikure and the Uzumaki clan were attacked and eradicated 20 years ago. They no longer exist. Tobirama nearly flinched. That was it should be impossible. The Uzumaki clan was nigh unbeatable, their village layered with seals for protection and alarms, storage seals for sieges. They had the largest chakra reserves of any known clan and the intelligence on how to use it all. Who? He swallowed. By whose hand? He asked, needing to know. Kirigakure and Kimogakure. He had to stop himself from asking more questions, demanding answers. Their sister village, his sister's clan, gone. And where was Konoha in that? Where were the other Uzumaki? Were Kirigakure and Kimogakure still standing? When his chakra flared and grew in density at his agitation, he fought to bring it back. How could Uzushio be gone? He'd visited the fortress on the island and gave a cursory examination of its defenses himself. He'd traveled there from his years as a child to his tenure as Hokage to view the Chunin exams. It had been a place of wonder and it couldn't be gone. Our condolences. Tobirama lifted his gaze from the floor to find Saru solemnly looking back. They kept each other captive for a long moment, each trying to convey their own message, before Tobirama nodded, accepting the words. I will need to pay my respects, he intoned, his voice deep and grave. Yet more names to pray for. But it does not nullify our pact. It was made in a time that predated even the warring clans and made with utter destruction in mind. He may be lying a bit. So long as any Uzumaki or Senju lives, we are bound. There was actually no clause detailing an end to the treaty. It was meant to go on indefinitely. Siblings, until the end, he murmured, hoping Nito hadn't truly been alone. No clan, husbands, or homes. Tobirama couldn't imagine. As touching as that sounds, Danzo replied, and Tobirama dug his nails into his arm, the gesture safely hidden in his sleeves. I can almost be certain that your pact does not include any such agreements over the case of Jinchurikis. Ah, here they go. Indeed, it does not, he confirmed. He blinked and resisted the urge to look in the direction of the Senju compound. What was Naruto doing leaving the wards? Danzo speaking regained his attention. Then it must be made clear that Naruto Uzumaki is an asset to the village. One we cannot allow to become loyal to anything but the village. Koharu and Hamura nodded firmly in agreement. Hamura folded his hands in his lap. If any one clan were to gain the allegiance of or have sway over the Jinchuriki, it would be detrimental to the future of the village. Koharu hummed. The Jinchuriki must be raised away from any political powers aside from Konoha itself. Only Konoha can provide for him and only Konoha can call upon him. Tobirama's chakra ached behind his control of it. Everything about what he was hearing screamed threat and he wanted nothing more than to wipe them all out, but the niceties of society and civilization chained him down, leaving him near insensate with rage. So you plan to be the one to throw him scraps to eat, he growled, the temperature dropping in the room even further as his control slipped. To give him rags to warm himself with and a debilitated apartment to house himself in. Alone. Hated. Reviled. So that when you deign to give him trash to live on, he looks upon you in favor. A sharp hiss escaped him and he clicked his teeth shut, trying to keep from fully losing his temper. The offense you give out so callously is infuriating. Were it I who still wore the hat, you would have been executed for your actions and misdeeds. You all make me sick. How dare you even speak of treating a child like this? Do not raise your voice at us. Koharu snapped, rising to her feet as her own chakra flared out. We are the elders of Konoha and you will respect us. You are nothing but power-hungry children who are so frightened at losing even an ounce of your position that you would subject a citizen of the village you lead to poverty and abuse in the name of conditioning him like a dog. Tobirama roared. This is what the leadership of Konoha has come to be. Danzo stamped his cane. The boy is the Jinchuriki and belongs to the village. There was no stopping the crashing tide of his chakra now. He is a child, Tobirama hissed, the very air glowing around him. A citizen of Konoha. You had no right to do that to him. He is a weapon. Danzo retorted and Tobirama was horrified at what he was hearing. Was this what his students had become? What had he done to make them so? The pictures on the walls rattled with the force of rising chakra. Callous old fool, he spat. Have you lost your senses? Naruto is not only the son of your former Hokage, but a clan child. The fact that you've decided to take advantage of the genocide of Konoha's sister ally in order to brainwash and break a small child would have the village's allies and supporters up in arms. Tobirama turned his eyes on Saru's back. Minato Namikaze was loved and adored by this village. If they learned that Naruto was his son, you would have a riot on your hands. It is only by the grace of a militaristic iron fist that you have not had the clans revolt as of yet. Do you even comprehend what kind of precedent you are setting with your treatment of a clan child? Koharu raised her chin. The village must come first. Everything we do is for the betterment of the village. Tobirama had to school his expression and keep from sneering. All of my teachings were for naught if you've truly convinced yourself of such. You are straining the delicate unity that keeps this village a village. You have already placed a strain upon Naruto and began to turn him on the village. No, that would be your doing, Hamura argued, his hands clenched in his lap. Everything was fine and going according to plan until you came along, Senju-sama. His teeth hurt from how hard he was grinding them. Setting aside how you admit that neglect and abuse of a village child was planned and premeditated, he snarled, his voice low and rough, I gave Naruto what he should have had from the beginning. Home, family, love. Jinchuriki are precious and a treasure to the village. With their very existence they keep us safe and you would squander that in pursuit of your greedy power games. Unbelievable. Danzo sked. You are too soft, sensei. The life of one person is an acceptable cost to ensure the safety and protection of the village. You taught us that. Tobirama stiffened in incredible offense. He barely noticed drops of water starting to form in the air, his chakra so contained and dense in such a small area that it physically started manifesting without his intent and command. I stayed behind to ensure your safe return to the village, to ensure the future of the village was secure, he whispered, voice dangerously soft and sharp. How dare Danzo presume to make a mockery of his sacrifice, of what he had been willing to give for his students? How fucking dare he pervert his actions to justify his behavior? I went willingly to give my life because my time to shape and mold the village for future generations had come and gone, and it was time for me to pass the torch. I sacrificed myself, of my own accord, so that your generation and the generations to follow could support and protect the future. Not, he growled, so that decrepit old men and women could cling to their power and position at the very cost of that future. You overstep, Koharu snapped. We know better than anyone how to protect and lead the village. Arrogant, thieving, immoral despots, he threw back, heedless of her oh-so-small power and effect. You do not hear what I speak, or you hear and you simply refuse to listen. Let me make myself painfully clear. This village was founded so no more children had to die or live their lives as soldiers and only as soldiers. Hashirama, Madara, and I all coveted this goal, and for that goal, Konoha was established. To see you all claim that your actions are for the betterment of the village, that you do so to ensure it has a future, sickens me and gives me the greatest insult. The future of the village is the children, of which you are already crippling yourself through your narrow-sightedness and lust for power. You speak as if we are still your students to lecture, Danzo said, his voice monotone and factual, blocking out any chance to talk and reach a middle ground. Times have changed and you will come to understand this. Let me be clear as to what is happening. Naruto Uzumaki is the Jinchuriki that belongs to Konohagakure and as thus will be treated according to our will. He is a sacrifice for the safety of the village. A sacrifice whose duty does not end with the simple sealing of a being inside of him. Tobirama had to hold himself perfectly still as Danzo met his gaze, challenging him. If he moved, he was afraid this entire building would come crumbling down. Naruto Uzumaki is nothing but another tool to be used at the expense of ensuring the village remains strong. Nothing more. There would be no convincing them, Tobirama knew now. Where before with Saru, his old student had shown guilt and shame, he felt no such emotions in Koharu's and Hamira's chakras. He saw no evidence of being contrite in Danzo's demeanor. Of his students, these three were firm and stuck in their ways and beliefs. He would be impressed by their resolve if it weren't so against his. Another chakra, swift and severe, joined his in blanketing the room, making the floorboards creak and shudder. You will hold your tongue, Danzo. Saru bellowed, glaring at his fellow and drawing any attention away from Tobirama's poorly hidden shock. The Senju reined his chakra in, making the air feel dry and coarse as he took the moisture with him. Naruto is a full citizen of the leaf and I will not tolerate any infringement on his rights and safety. Do I make myself clear? Danzo pursed his lips. Don't tell me you've gotten attached, Hokage. He is a child Jinchuriki. He could lose control at any moment. Saru sneered. Do not play games with me. We are aware of the seal's strength and integrity, we know the sacrifice that went into ensuring that. He jabbed a finger at a framed picture on the wall. Of the fourth Hokage. Minato gave his life to save the village and ensure that it would stay safe. I will not have you sullying his memory by defiling his son. I warned you away. I warned you all away. The Hokage redirected his gaze to include Koharu and Hamira, who were radiating disbelief and disgust. And in return you also bound my hands, but not in this. Naruto has family now and we will not interfere in it. You can't seriously be thinking of entertaining this notion of them being who knows how many cousins removed by marriage, Hamira challenged. I have claimed Naruto through the old clan ways, Tobirama interjected, drawing attention back to him. Before my clan's avatar he was accepted and welcomed as Senju. By our very chakra, he is kin and clan. Sarutobi nodded in sharp satisfaction, very much looking like an old general standing before his war table. Meanwhile Koharu and Hamira spluttered denials and demands for annulment and banishment. Danzo merely stood silent and Tobirama wondered if his student had recognized he'd lost this battle or was plotting his next move. Possibly both and something else as well. Regardless, Tobirama was walking away, not having won, but with his own desires and wishes still respected. Despite their opinions on how Naruto should be treated and what is best for the village, they could not take legal action or enforce their will onto him or his nephew. Like any other meeting with any elders, this meeting was pointless and merely a chance to argue. But Tobirama was pleased and disturbed with the knowledge he now had of his students. Danzo was right. Times had changed and so had they. He knew better who stood against him, and also who wasn't standing against him. He looked curiously upon Saru, who stood and acted apart from his comrades. Curious. So mote it be. Congratulations, the Hokage offered tersely, perfunctorily. Do the elders of Konoha wish to raise any more concerns, false though they may be? Complete and total sullen silence. Then this meeting is adjourned. Senju-sama, thank you for your time in explaining to the elders the laws and facts they already should have been aware of. Tobirama nodded, feeling conflicted in how this had turned out. Of course, Hokage-sama. He bowed his head and took his dismissal, exiting the office. He closed the door and felt the silencing seals activate. This had gone both as he has expected and then as he hadn't expected it. Complicated indeed. Naruto hummed as he walked a familiar path through the village, looking silently up at the sky. A lot had changed. Even things that seemed the same had changed. His stomach growled lightly, reminding him that it was dinner time, but it didn't hurt like before. The air was cold, but he couldn't really feel it with his new clothes. It was late and he was alone, but he wasn't really alone. Naruto Senju. His name was still Naruto Uzumaki, but he was Senju now, like his uncle. He had a branch on the ancestor tree, his own room in an actual house in his clan compound, and a man who was family. Everything was different now. Kit. He hummed and felt thick fur brush against his side. Not that way, the big cat decided, pushing him down another road. Huh. He looked away from the sky and realized he'd been unintentionally going back to his old apartment. Oh. Okay. The cat, a snow leopard, Inu said, chuffed, a sound he'd heard his uncle make a few times in order to get his attention. It was funny. The more time he spent around Eri, the more he realized how much Tobirama was like a cat. They resumed their walk, his own footsteps scuffing the ground and Eri's steps completely silent. He used to do this all the time when he was bored. Just wander the village and see what he could find or play with. It was better than just sitting in his apartment alone. When he'd woken up from his nap to find his uncle gone, summoned to go do adult stuff, he'd been reminded of that feeling. Inu or not, Naruto had felt bad. Especially when Inu's I never really looked at him, just skipped over the top of his head. So he'd left the compound, telling Eri he wanted to go on an adventure. At least the cat looked at him even if she didn't talk much. Naruto took a breath through his nose, taking in the smell that was just village and the stray sense of people who'd walked down this path before. He didn't really come to this side of the village often, preferring the parks and roads just off the main paths. Busy, but not too busy. Less chance of people yelling at him and more just avoiding him. He observed the park they were entering, taking in the trees and plants. Naruto thought they were pretty, but kind of stilted and flat. No real life to them. Not that he really knew what life looked like before he'd seen the Senju Gardens, but still. Plants and trees were cool. He liked the way they smelled. Naruto stepped off the path through the park and went towards the trees, wondering what he could find and when Uncle Toby would be home. He was hungry and didn't want to eat or play in the garden or go to bed without the man there with him. Uncle made normal things better. Eri chuffed again, rubbing against his side. When he looked down, the leopard turned her nose off to the right. He followed the direction and saw another kid. Weird. He didn't normally see other kids out after it got dark. Hey, he called as he changed his destination. The other kid jumped and it was hard to see them, but Naruto could see dark hair and a light-colored jacket. He smelled flowers, rice, and lavender at a distance. Whatcha doin'? You the kid, a girl, stayed hunched over her knees, head bowed. I am pick ing, a pale finger pointed to the flowers just in front of her. Picking flowers? Naruto guessed, perking up as he came closer. Oh. I think I know these, believe it. They're he mimed with his hands, peering at these small ones. They're big and bright. He squinted. See, I know those are the poofy ones. But it starts with a C. The girl shifted. Camellias, she said so quietly Naruto almost missed it. Yeah. That's the one. We got a lot of them in our garden, but I like the water lilies best, he told the girl, coming to crouch by the girl. Naruto poked at the ground around the flowers like Uncle Toby had shown him to do, feeling how wet the ground was. They come in a bunch of colors, you know? And grow on water. The girl nodded shyly. Emichim. And most of the flowers in my garden are dead because of winter. But I remembered seeing these and thought, when she trailed off, tapping her fingers against each other, Naruto tilted his head curiously. Thought what? She jumped in for the first time. Naruto caught a glimpse of her eyes. For a second, he thought she was blind, they were so pale and white, but he saw how they flicked from him to the flowers and back. He'd never seen eyes like hers before. I thought I could take them home. I'll like bright colors too. Naruto nodded in understanding. I like the color orange, believe it. What's your favorite color? Pale eyes stared at him before dropping. Purple, she whispered, and Naruto thought critically about the color, crossing his arms over his chest. Finally, he nodded again. That is a good color. It even goes with orange. Darker with lighter, you know? Uncle Toby had said something like that when explaining why everything couldn't be orange. That there had to be balance or something or other. Naruto wasn't sure he believed the man. You really think so? The girl asked, and Naruto was confused on why she sounded so like she was expecting to be yelled at. He hadn't hit her or yelled at her. He shook off the thought. Yeah. I wouldn't say it unless I meant it, believe it. It's also pretty cool because there are a lot of flowers that are purple, yeah? I haven't found a lot that are orange. Stupid, he pouted. Naruto straightened and looked back to the girl. There are some lilies. Not water lilies, but land lilies. The girl tapped her fingers together quicker. They're orange. Daisies too. Huh? The girl flinched and Naruto brought his flailing hands back to his chest, hugging himself. There are orange flowers? She hesitated before nodding. That's awesome, believe it. I'm gonna get all the orange flowers. And I'll get you all the purple flowers. What? The boy smiled. It makes sense, doesn't it? I like orange, so I'll get all the orange flowers. And you like purple, so you should have all the purple flowers. There's a lot in our garden. You should come see and pick some. The girl froze almost completely, staring at him. Why you'd let me take flowers from your garden? Yeah. It's a pretty cool garden and everyone should see it, believe it. A new voice chuckled and Naruto nearly fell over from Eri butting against his side. I'm pretty sure you should ask Tobirama Bakken before inviting people to the compound, kid. The girl squeaked and jumped again. AAT talking cat? Snow leopard, Eri corrected, sitting down and lifting a paw to groom herself. This is Eri, Naruto introduced. She's my uncle's summons. She's watching me until he gets back. Oh. The girl bobbed up and down in a bow. An honor to meet you, Eri-san. I am Hinata Hyuga. Pleasure, Eri purred before turning to press a cold wet nose to Naruto's cheek. The kid of my Bakken is Naruto Uzumaki. Forgive his manners, we're still training him. The girl, Hinata, giggled into her hands while Naruto huffed indignantly. I don't need training, believe it, he crowed before falling over completely when Eri bumped into him again. Hinata's giggles rose in volume once more as Eri looked down imperiously. Kid, you have a long way to go. The ears on the top of the snow leopard's head swiveled around almost completely before she turned to look over her shoulder. Bakken, she greeted. Naruto scrambled upright and beamed in the direction she was looking. Tobiachi-chan, he cried as the man appeared out of the shadows of the park. You're back. Red eyes practically glowed through the evening dark and found his. Naruto smiled sheepishly as a familiar eyebrow rose, but his uncle's expression stayed open and not tense. I am. However, you are not where I left you. He felt the familiar heavy big strong ankle wrap around him and relaxed under it. Naruto scratched his cheek. I got bored. The man came even with a tree and looked over the three of them. And where was Kakashi in this? He was boring, Naruto explained simply. So I left him. The other eyebrow went up and the boy worried for a second that he'd done something wrong. Eri spoke up. Ka-san stayed behind and said she'd make sure he left. The dog-kin tried making dinner for the kid. I suggested kid take a walk when I smelled smoke. Naruto giggled when Tobirama looked very unimpressed at the news. I see, he rumbled before sighing. I'll make him pay for any damages done to our home. So you haven't eaten yet? Naruto shook his head, excitement filling him. Dare I ask what you want to eat? Ramen, the boy exploded, jumping to his feet. He was about to bounce over to his uncle's side before a thought occurred to him. Oh, hey. Achi-chan, can Hinata come with us? We were talking about flowers. She likes the color purple. Tobirama tilted his head slightly to the side and Naruto waited eagerly as he looked to the little girl. Hello, Hinata-chan. I am Tobirama Senju. Hi, Senju-san, the girl managed to get out quietly. Naruto looked between the two quickly, before frowning when he saw his uncle pause. Was something wrong? Are you hungry? Naruto and I are going to get ramen. It will warm you up. You don't seem properly dressed for the cold. Huh? Naruto looked back to the girl and did notice she didn't have gloves on and only had a thin jacket. Here. You can have my jacket. He unzipped his outermost jacket and offered it to the girl. He still had a jacket on and yeah, it wasn't his orange one, but it still kept him warm. Come on. We can talk more about flowers and stuff at Tochiji-san's place. He makes the best ramen, believe it. Sure. Okay. He took the girl's hand after she slid the jacket on and pulled her along to Uncle Toby's side, taking the man's hand in his free one. He smiled up at his uncle. Ready. Let's go get some ramen. Tobirama checked his chakra sense for the 6th time since they set out from the compound, ensuring that the person he was seeking out was in the same spot. It hadn't taken much debate with himself before he decided to venture out, knowing he would forever be curious and time was a precious commodity. Naruto yawned on his shoulder, wrapping his arms tighter around his neck, before relaxing again. He did regret pulling the boy out of bed so early, but it was the best time to catch everyone in the same place before the tasks of the day drew them in different directions. He allowed himself the opportunity to nuzzle into freshly washed blonde locks, breathing in the jasmine and sandalwood shampoo the boy had decided was his. Naruto tilted his head into it and Tobirama smiled at the gesture. Peace welled up inside of Tobirama. Warm child tucked under his Haori, the village quiet and waking, and tentative hope for the day. It was a heady combination. Some nerves came back as he found himself approaching the open and inviting archway. Proudly painted at the pinnacle of the arch was the Akimichi clan symbol. There were no guards at the entrance to the compound, but Tobirama spotted the string of wood panels, decorated with various kanji of food dishes. Charming. Naruto, he prompted, rousing the boy from his doze while he reached up for the pull string. With a slow pull, he set the wooden panels cycling, clacking against each other as they went. He felt the chakra presences from the visitor's house flicker in response to the sound and stepped back to wait. The boy hummed into his neck. "We're here. Ergina BFD," his sprout mumbled. "More than you can imagine. If all went well." The door to the visitor's house slid open and out stepped an Akimichi woman. Tobirama saw and felt a few more people curiously look to see who was visiting this morning and then patiently waited out their inevitable shock. The woman comported herself professionally despite doing a double take. "Naidame-sama," she greeted, bowing. "Can I help you with something?" Her eyes fell to the shifting bundle on his chest, softening when Naruto blinked sleepily back at her. "Hello, Naruto-kun." "Eh? Do I?" Naruto yawned widely. "Know you?" "Not personally, no." Tobirama bowed his head. "Akimichi-san. Please forgive our intrusion. I was hoping to inquire after Torifu Akimichi's health and possibly visit if it was not too much." The woman smiled. "Elder Torifu? He's still kicking a fuss and nagging the kids. I'm sure he'd be happy to see you. Come inside." "Thank you, that would be wonderful." He followed her back into the visitor's house where she got him settled with tea at a kotatsu. Also in the house were two other Akimichi, another woman and a man. They shared trivial greetings and niceties. Naruto wiggled out of his hold and reached for some of the fruit left with the tea. "Where are we, Aji-chan?" he asked, sniffing the air curiously. "We're at the Akimichi clan compound. I have an old student here and I wanted to see how he was doing." He'd told the boy such last night, asking if he wanted to come with. Tobirama was beginning to learn that Naruto was not much of a morning person despite having endless energy. He thanked any god that was listening for that good fortune. Children were nightmares to watch before his third cup of tea. His nephew accepted the peeled orange he handed him. "Aka Akimichi. One of the four noble clans of Konoha, if that is still the same." The Akimichi man glanced over. "It is," he confirmed, and Tobirama nodded his thanks. "They are one of the strongest clans in the entire village," Tobirama continued, sipping the fruity, light tea they'd been given. It was tart and citrus-y and he wasn't sure if he liked it or not. It was different and exotic for certain, though. The Akimichi were the first to join the village after the Senju and Uchiha made peace and united. They are known for their incredible strength and large clan numbers. One Akimichi could wipe out an entire platoon of enemies, let alone a team of them. Naruto looked dazzled. "Really?" The Senju nodded seriously. "Quite. They are also known for their incredible cooking." He had to keep his lips from quirking when the boy started to practically glow at idea of food. "They are a good clan to be friends with. Loyal and kind should you treat them the same." Naruto blinked, the sparkles fading. He pursed his lips and looked up at him. "Friends? But what if they—" He moved a hand to his stomach, where the seal of the Shinigami lay. Tobirama had to give Minato some respect, grudgingly, for having the gall to use a SSS-rank forbidden jutsu of the Uzumaki clan. The Senju nudged the back of a knuckle to the child's hand. "I personally don't think you'll find many of those people here, but if we do, I'm right here. No matter what, you can come back to me and we'll be okay." The child didn't look totally convinced, but he accepted the bundle of grapes, an absolute treat he'd only seen in the courts of the daimyo, that Tobirama held out for him. He wished there were more assurances he could give the boy, but he didn't know what else to say or offer. Sometimes, no matter what, there were always going to be people who hurt them and hated them. Even after decades of service and contribution, many of the Senju clan couldn't speak with him without making the sign to ward off evil. It hurt, but he'd come to just value their opinions and words less than everyone else's. However, it was a harsh and unforgiving method, and one he didn't want to teach Naruto to do. The woman returned a few minutes later, her bottom lip held between her teeth and her eyes full of mirth. "Elder Torafu will see you," she announced as if he couldn't feel his old student's flurry of potent emotions. Excitement, exasperation, nervousness, joy, and irritation. It was a change from the normally serious and darkly amused student during the war. "We almost didn't believe the rumors when we heard you had returned, Naidame-sama," she said as she led the way across the open courtyard and through the fire pits, some of which had whole animals on them being manned by younger Akimichi. The woman waved to a few as they passed. But Torafuji-sama just huffed and puffed and said he knew you'd come back. Tobirama raised an eyebrow. "It's been almost 40 years since I was last reported alive," he observed, and the woman's pigtails bobbed and swayed with her nod. "That's what we said." He never mentioned anything in all those years, but the second we got word, he was the first to believe it. Curious. I suppose I should feel flattered by his faith in me. She threw back her head in a loud laugh that had Naruto squeezing his hand harder. He tugged the hand behind himself in reflex, guiding the boy to tuck himself out of sight. "Kami knows you're the only one he has faith in." Before he had a chance to puzzle over that statement, she came to a stop in front of a house and slid open the door without so much as a knock. "Aji-sama." And from the side room closest to the door came Torafu. He had gained in size with age, much like any Akimichi would have. He was easily 3 times as wide as Tobirama was and taller than him by a head, which was a rare thing for Tobirama to realize. Only Hashirama had been taller than him for a long while. His painted cheeks hung heavy like the jowls of a bulldog, the purple stars standing out against slightly tanned skin. The spiky mess of brown hair, now gray with some parts of white, had been tamed a bit, now laying back for the most part, but still as bristly as before. Tobirama found himself reminded of a boar as he came under the gaze of those narrowed black eyes. Black eyes that widened and lit up. "Sensei," the man boomed, and Tobirama used every ounce of his speed to push Naruto back and out of the way as he suddenly found himself swept up in an embrace that put Hashirama to shame. "It's you. Welcome back, you prickly bastard." Tobirama wheezed and was more than a little disconcerted to find his feet no longer touching the ground and his arms tightly pressed to his sides. "So many years and you still have such disrespect for your honorable teacher," he snarked back with the last of his air. It was a good sacrifice. The Senju was treated to a rare case of motion sickness as he rose and fell with the old man's merry laughter. "And I still say people are too afraid of you to actually see you." His lungs and ribs thanked Torafu when he put him down again. Standing on his own 2 feet was a wonderful thing. Tobirama gracefully held still as his former student examined him closely. "You haven't aged a single day, sage strike me now. I know plenty of women who would kill to know your secret." "Ah." "And with a little one." Tobirama felt small hands grab onto his pants again and dropped a hand gently onto Naruto's head. Torafu took a step back and bent down from his great height to peer at the child with a crooked smile. "Hello there. I'm Torafu Akimichi." He saw Torafu's eyes flicker slightly from side to side, taking in the whisker marks on his nephew's cheeks. The elderly man still asked, "And who might you be?" Naruto shifted his hands to full-on wrap around Tobirama's leg. Naruto Uzumaki. My nephew. My sprout," Tobirama supplied and relaxed as honest joy spread through Torafu's chakra and a wide smile lifted his heavy cheeks. "He's your uncle," he gasped in mock horror. "Kid, I'm so sorry, he's so boring." "Tobiaji-chan isn't boring, believe it." You take that back. Naruto shouted only to pause when Tobirama carefully tugged on some of his hair. The senju huffed and rolled his eyes for the boy to see. Don't mind, Sprout. He's teasing me. Eh? Why? The boy narrowed blue eyes at Torifu as the man straightened slowly, old joints and pains obviously plaguing him. Tobirama used to be my sensei, Torifu explained, sharing an amused look with his teacher. It gives me special rights to tease and play with him, keep him from getting bored and too stuck up. Really? Naruto exclaimed at the same time Tobirama deadpanned, no, it doesn't. The Akimichi chuckled to himself and stepped back again, turning to the side. Well, come in, come in. My wife and son are making breakfast. Are you too hungry? That was the magic word. Tobirama watched as his nephew darted forward further into the house, barely remembering to take off his sandals. Tobirama was treated to a warm welcome from Mina, Torifu's wife, and Toichi, their son. Naruto was swept up in a traditional Akimichi lifestyle of a warm bustling kitchen, constant chatter, and plenty of food to eat. You're going to lose your boy to my wife, Torifu warned. They were both seated at the dining room table watching as Mina let Naruto taste the cooking stir-fry from her wooden spoon. Tobirama doubted that given Naruto still glanced in his direction, probably making sure he was still present and in the room. But he played along. He needs a woman's influence in his life, he said reasonably, and Torifu nodded in agreeance. Mina was a good mother and put the fear and respect of any woman, kunoichi or civilian, into Toichi. He waved a meaty hand to his much younger and slimmer son, who took more after his mother than his father. The man smiled at his father's attention, setting down some warm sake and tea. It was much too early for Tobirama to even consider drinking as acceptable, but he knew Akimichi had a ridiculously high metabolism and tolerance for alcohol. He's grown to be a fine son, don't you think? Tobirama nodded and took in the man's presence and bearing. He was easy and relaxed, an Akimichi at home with friends and family. His chakra reserves were modest, but it shared the dense quality that had made Torifu stand out from his clan in his youth. Just from chakra alone, Tobirama would put him as a chunin. Now, we just need to find him a woman to make an honest man out of him. Toichi groaned. Mina giggled at her son's plight. All in your own time, dear, but please grace us with grandchildren before we're gone. The man sighed and let his mother kiss his cheek. Yes, Ma. Tobirama sipped from his tea, careful not to let himself fill up on it. This would make it his fifth cup of tea since he woke up, and he normally didn't have much of an appetite to begin with. It's good to see you with home and family, he murmured quietly for only Torifu to hear. Warmth and gratefulness softened his old student's expression. Thank you, he returned honestly. It was a stroke of luck, to be honest. I was out on mission when I met Mina. Long story short, I came back skin and bones but alive thanks to her, and when I had my wits about me again I begged her to marry me. We have time, Tobirama pointed out and subtly leaned into Torifu when the man nudged him with an elbow. That we do. Tobirama listened attentively as Torifu wove first the story of love and marriage and then of the joy of having a child. Naruto came back once or twice, hiding from fingers that would have pinched his cheeks, but ultimately entertained himself by following Mina and Toichi around the kitchen. Breakfast was nearly ready when a knock came from the door. Toichi went to answer and returned with two new chakra presences. It's Choza-sama, the younger man announced, and Tobirama was secretly relieved he would not have to seek the clan head out himself. Torifu straightened from where he was, laughing himself hoarse from retelling the story of Toichi's first attempt at sneaking out. Ah, Choza, my boy. Welcome. Have you and little Choji eaten breakfast yet? The tall clan head with a riot of spiky red hair grinned back. Pardon the intrusion, uncle. We had a small breakfast, but we could always have more, couldn't we, Choji? The child, who looked achingly small compared to the size and might of his father and great-uncle, nodded quickly with a soft hum, though he was half hidden from sight behind his father's leg. He looked across the room, focusing mainly on Tobirama and Naruto. Torufu dropped a hefty hand on Tobirama's shoulder. Choza, this is my sensei, Tobirama Senju, and his nephew, Naruto Uzumaki. Tobirama sketched a shallow bow, prodding Naruto on the side to copy him. Akimichi-sama, Akimichi-san, he greeted. Good morning and good meals. Choza blinked in surprise. You know our ways, he observed, moving to sit across from Torufu while Choji sat directly across from Tobirama. Tobirama tilted his head at Torufu. Students aren't the only ones who can learn, he demurred. Torufu went to great lengths to ensure I and his fellow students knew how to cook and brawl. Torufu scoffed. For all that you used those lessons. You're still too skinny, sensei. Your nephew even more so. Something I am working on, he assured his student before leaning down to whisper in Naruto's ear. Choji looks a little alone, he murmured, and the blonde stilled. Why don't you go tell him about our herb and vegetable garden? His nephew glanced up at him uncertainly and he nodded in encouragement. When Naruto decided that crawling under the table to get to the other child was easier than standing up and walking, he turned his eyes to the ceiling in a plead for patience. The other adults laughed at his suffering as the food was finally laid out. Light conversation was made over the meal, though Tobirama dearly wished he could speak freely. However, it was considered rude to discuss business of any kind over a meal had with or made by an Akimichi. Meal times were times for friends and family and to strengthen bonds. As predicted, Tobirama could barely finish half of his plate even with Torufu's needling and Mina's concerned prodding. He simply did not have the stomach space for more food. Naruto was more than happy to take his plate though, he and Choji having hit it off while talking about ramen, of course. Given the little Hyuga girl his nephew had also befriended over flowers and ramen, Tobirama was beginning to give credence to Mito's drunk mutterings about ramen being a weapon of peace. The meal eventually wound down and Tobirama made sure to give plenty of thanks and compliments over the cooking to Mina and Toichi, Naruto naturally following example with his own brand of enthusiasm and volume. Dad, can I show Naruto the butterflies? Choji asked eagerly once the plates were pulled from the table. Choza smiled at his son. So long as Naidame-sama is okay with it. Naruto immediately whipped around. Can I go? May you go, Tobirama corrected out of reflex but agreed with a flick of his fingers to the door. Stay in the compound. I'll be here or I'll come find you to let you know where I will be. He taped 2 fingers to his head to indicate his sensor abilities. Naruto grinned and the boys clambered over each other with shouts and laughter, slamming the door open and shut in their hurry. Tobirama offered a quiet apology to Mina about the door, which the woman waved away. Choza sighed happily, looking in the direction the boys had gone. It's been a while since I've seen Choji that excited. Having a friend will do him good. Naruto as well, the Senju added. I'm not as energetic as he. Having friends his own age will give him an outlet that I cannot. It was painfully obvious Naruto was a social butterfly and Tobirama couldn't even begin to imagine what it was like to constantly have people hurt and bruise that portion of his being. He supposed it would be like if someone constantly dragged him out of his lab or his library and belittled him for getting exhausted around people, and that made his heart sting. What brings you over today, Choza? Torufu asked, and Tobirama silently thanked his student for redirecting the conversation to business. The clan head gave a somewhat guilty expression. Sorry for cutting in on your reunion with Naidame-sama, uncle, but I was informed that he was here, and Tobirama rested his elbow on the table, gently shaking his head when Mina offered to pour him more tea. I apologize for not requesting your permission before visiting your compound and clansmen. Choza waved his hand while Torufu made a sound of disgust. As if anyone would stop you from visiting me. Speaking of, I expected to be visited sooner. And here I thought I was your favorite. The Senju pursed his lips. I'll admit that I was hesitant after my reunions with my other students. Torufu's expression and chakra darkened noticeably, his upper lip curling like he just smelled something rotten. Che. Those four. If falling out, then. Like you couldn't believe. Torifu shook his head. You would have been ashamed of us, sensei. The way we fought and tore into each other. Kagami and I couldn't understand why they would do what they did. Why they are doing what they are now. It wasn't long after your disappearance. They changed, and not for the better. Tobirama found himself hesitating again before resigning himself to the truth. So Kagami is indeed. Torifu nodded slowly. Sage watch over him, but yes. A bad mission. Getting close to 30 years ago now. That was sad. Kagami had been his first student and the only one to get close to him. This was the boy he'd taught from even before the founding of Konoha and beyond the man's promotion to jonin. Tobirama had been proud of Kagami and welcomed him into nearly all aspect of his life, his office, his lab, his home. He had loved Kagami. He'd hoped, when he hadn't sensed that familiar teasing, blazing flame of chakra, that Kagami was out of the village for whatever reason. But that was not the case. Torifu dropped a heavy arm around Tobirama's shoulders, giving him a quick embrace. He's buried on Uchiha land, he informed the other before withdrawing. Tobirama couldn't help the small thought that Kagami wouldn't have stopped touching him. He would have made himself comfortable draped over Tobirama and made it near impossible for him to move until Kagami felt like he'd been properly comforted. Such a touchy-feely Uchiha. Tobirama nodded his thanks. I will have to pay my respects. And soon. Before the elders try to muddle in my affairs again. Torifu groaned and genuinely looked pained. Please tell me they didn't try. I am not one to lie, Torifu, you know this. Though they were especially idiotic enough to try to tell me who I could make my clan heir. Choza choked on his tea and pounded on his own chest. Tea they what? The Senju nodded. They tried to argue that since the Senju are a clan loyal to Konoha, that I must concede. The Akimichi clan head flexed his jaw, looking well and truly angry. The audacity of the elders. That's unheard of. Torifu crossed his arms. And that they thought it might work on you. Were they just looking to piss you off? They are succeeding if that is their goal, Tobirama muttered before sighing, reaching up a hand to rub the throbbing spot between his eyebrows. It concerns me greatly that the elders of the village have gained so much power while Sara seems to let them have their way, he said carefully, watching carefully for the reactions of not only his student, but Choza as well. Torifu and Choza both looked mildly uncomfortable, their chakra swirling with uneasiness. To be honest, sensei, you are not the only one to think so. Choza nodded, spinning his teacup idly. The Nara and Yamanaka clan heads have brought it up with me a few times. I know the Uchiha clan also feels the power imbalance. Tobirama frowned. How so? I thought the Uchiha were still one of the four noble clans. The Akimichi head heaved a heavy sigh, frowning. The Uchiha are well, they're being pushed out. The Senju leveled his stare dead center on the other clan head. What did you say? Choza winced. It's not official, but actions speak loudly and no one is happy about it. Tobirama bet they weren't. If the Uchiha, a noble clan and one of the two founding clans of Konoha, were pushed out, then what did that say for the other clans? The precedent that would set was catastrophic. You've heard of how the Kyubi attacked the village 5 years ago, no doubt. He nodded tightly. Well, rumors started circulating. A lot of them. And they all tied back to the Uchiha being responsible for it or for standing aside while the village was attacked. Now anyone who is clan knows that the Uchiha were assigned to evacuation detail and guarding the shelters, but everyone also knows the story of how Madara Uchiha led the Kyubi to attack the village so long ago. Coupled with the fact that not a single Uchiha was there in the fight against the Bijou, and public opinion shifted. The entire compound was moved to the outer portion of Konoha just 2 years ago. There was a line about it being better for the Uchiha, but we knew. Then teams with Uchiha on them started getting less quality missions, less vital missions. They're still the wealthiest and strongest, but they're feeling the pressure. Tobirama was struck speechless. He would have been less surprised if he was hearing the same tale, but with the Senju had they still been around. The Uchiha were the core of Konoha and they were being pushed out and slighted? How have they not revolted? And the elders are doing this? Tobirama asked, needing to know. Danzo suggested it and the others followed. And the Hokage, as always, assigns missions. Tobirama clicked his teeth. He wasn't surprised. Torifu shifted a bit. They've changed. The three, Danzo, Koharu, and Hamura, they don't trust the Uchiha. They turned on Kagami of all people, saying he was happy to have left you behind. That he was happy to see the bane of the Uchiha dead. Tobirama slapped a hand onto the table, trying to steady himself at the vile venom he was hearing. As if they didn't know his Mangekyo was awakened after losing you. Tobirama took a very long moment to compose himself, breathing deep and visualizing blowing out the flame of fury raging in his breast. Eventually, he steepled his fingers and breathed over them. May I place my trust in you too? Of course, Torifu replied promptly while Choza tilted his head. You are aware of my duties and responsibilities, the red-headed man said in way of an answer, but it was answer enough. I have only been in this time for a short while, but I've been made aware of crimes and atrocities committed by the elders and by the Hokage that I cannot abide by, he started. They have consistently shown no remorse for their actions and motives and give no sign of being willing to change. I have no faith or confidence in their ability to lead Konoha or to have its best interests in mind. I do not speak of a coup d'etat, he assured Choza and got an understanding look. I speak of seeing them and others like them brought to court for their crimes and punished justly for them. And what crimes would you have them charged with? Choza asked, his tone even in giving nothing away. His chakra let Tobirama feel how tense he was, but also how hopeful he was. What I could prove now and take to court are charges of child abuse, child neglect, child abandonment of various counts and severity. All of which were done to a clan child. Tobirama had done his best to see about closing the gaps of inequality between noble-born clan members and shinobi originating from civilian families, but the uppity clan heads of the shinobi council from his own time had been incredibly hard to sway and convince. In this instance, however, it would work in his favor. Choza Tsuked. From the rumors I hear, there is a lot more you could charge them with, but those alone would disqualify them from any government administrative position. I'll introduce you to Shikaku and Inoichi. They're the clan heads of the Nara and Yamanaka clans, with Shikaku being the Jonin commander and Inoichi being the head of TNI. This meeting was turning out better than he'd imagined. He'd hoped to befriend the Akimichi clan head eventually and get an introduction to other clan heads, but to learn that the Nara and Yamanaka clan heads held such high positions of power and intelligence was incredible. If he could convince them to back him in his play to rip his old students from their lofty, filthy seats, then it would be a good amount of progress. Of the clans of Konoha, they could be differentiated between whether they had ties to the Senju clan or Uchiha clan back in the time of warring clans. When Konoha had been founded, the Senju and Uchiha clans had reached out to their various allies and asked them to join. The Akimichi and Uzumaki were longtime friends and allies to the Senju clan, and while the Uzumaki had declined and chosen to remain on their island, the Akimichi had agreed and brought with them the Nara and Yamanaka. The Uchiha had close ties to the Aburame, Inazuka, and Hitaki, all of them following the Uchiha's lead. The Uchiha also had a rivalry at one time with the Hyuga clan over the prowess of their dojutsu, which left the Senju to negotiate with the Hyuga. And due to some shared missions and goodwill, the Sarutobi had answered the call when Tobirama had reached out to them. If Tobirama were to use old connections, he could get a chance to speak with not only the Naras and Yamanakas, but also the Hyuga. The Sarutobi clan was off limits due to Saru being the Hokage. But Tobirama could also possibly speak with the Uchiha given the tension they apparently had with the village. He owed it to Kagami, and to Hashirama, to do his best to see that the Uchiha are welcomed and at home in Konoha. Konoha would not be the village it was and is without Madara's clan after all. Maybe this political field wasn't as treacherous as he thought if this was how his old students had done things. I would be thankful, Tobirama replied to Choza, meaning it more than the man probably knew. Choza smiled before looking over when Torifu grunted. I almost forgot, the elderly man mused. Mina-chan. Could you bring? The hallway door slid open, revealing the woman. In her hands, a red scroll. Mina clucked her tongue. Your memory may be fading with age, but mine is not, dear husband. What did I ever do to deserve you? Torifu kissed the back of her hand and accepted the scroll. He then held it out to Tobirama. This is for you, sensei. The senju frowned as he took it, turning it over and reflexively checking it for tracks. What is this? Mito-sama gave it to me. Torifu sighed as Tobirama startled faintly. Kagami and I were often in the Heim's presence and company as the years wore on. I tried to convince her to move to the Akimichi compound when Tsunade Heim left, but she said she was old and not long for the world. She gave me that scroll just a day before she passed, sage preserve her. It's as if she knew the Shinigami was coming. Tobirama turned his gaze down to the red scroll that suddenly felt so much heavier in his hands. Mito had left this for him? I don't understand, he stated, struggling to look away from the simple scroll. I should have been gone for a long time at that point. Why would she have left something for me? I was confused too. I even thought that her age was showing, shame on me. Torifu sniffed and shook his head. But she sounded so sure when I asked. She said, your branch hadn't fallen yet. Tobirama sucked in a sharp breath and Torifu glanced at him. So it did mean something. I forgive me, but I must go. He gritted his teeth. Where was Mito buried? No, wait. A location came to mind unbidden and he knew instantly where she was. I know. Apologies, but, go, sensei, Torifu commanded and Choza waved as well even if he looked confused. I will introduce you to the others later. Have a good afternoon. Tobirama stood up and exited quickly, overwhelmed with the sudden realization. A branch did not fall from the ancestral tree simply because a senju died. A branch fell if a senju died before new growth could spring from their branch. Tobirama's branch already bore the scars of Itama's and Kawurama's branches falling upon their deaths, much too young and new to be anywhere near an age to bear new life. Tobirama had been a rare exception to that rule. In his father's absence due to battle and his stepmother's refusal to present his little brothers to the ancestral tree, Tobirama had done it for them, taking the responsibility and honor of caring for and protecting his little brothers. His branch bore the marks of his failure and in his room were two very small and thin branches that were perfectly preserved in sealed boxes. But because his branch bore no surviving life, if he had died before presenting Naruto, his branch would have fallen. Mito had been taught the very same story he'd told Naruto and knew their ways. She was one of the few wives who had branches on the ancestral tree, one of the few to be accepted. Butsuma's first wife, Hashirama's and Tobirama's mother, was another who had been accepted. His second wife had not been and she'd hated the tree for it, refusing to present her blood sons to it. Mito had known to expect to gather Tobirama's fallen branch. And yet, his hadn't fallen. Mito had known Tobirama was alive. And she'd waited. And waited. And waited. Tobirama had to pause just outside Torifu's door, struggling to not hyperventilate or let his grief show. Mito had waited for him until the day before she died to pass on the burden of this scroll. She'd kept faith he would return for decades and Tobirama hurt to know he couldn't tell her he was finally home. Tobirama sat in his home's main sitting room, still and silent except for his own breathing. He rested his cheek on the knee drawn up to his chest, his other leg curled underneath him. Behind him was the large form of Mari, the snow leopard who had raised him next to her daughter, Eri, to teach him the values of her clan, and to teach him senjutsu. Her body caged him in, waiting for him to sit back and rest on her, but he couldn't. The several candles he had lit flickered with the draft flowing through the house. In front of him, set in painfully exact piles, were hundreds of letters. From Mito to "My dear honored brother." Tobirama looked over the scrolls upon scrolls of Mito's neat and tidy handwriting, written to keep him up to date on family events, milestones, and interesting happenings. Some scrolls even had small storage seals that contained pictures. Tsunachan and her genin team. Kimitada-kun and his wife, holding Tsunachan's newborn baby brother. Mito had written of everything. A chronology of events and thoughts and feelings from his beloved sister so that he may one day still be a part of the family that continued to grow and change in his absence. He was aware of how Tsunade took an interest in medical ninjutsu and trained with her little brother, Nawaki, who was the absolute spitting image of Kawurama, every day. He learned of Tsunachan's genin team and how they grew to become the legendary Sannin, and their eventual falling out. He was told how the Second Great War robbed her of her children and one of her grandchildren. He learned of how Tsunachan could no longer look at herself in the mirror and hated her surname before eventually leaving altogether one night. He came to know of young Kushina, who would take Mito's last earthly burden and relieved her of her duty. Tobirama knew it was not just for his benefit that so many hours were put into writing all of this. He was now privy to Mito's most private thoughts, her doubts, her concerns, her pain. He had come to know her before his disappearance, before Konoha even, and he knew she'd been lonely. Away from clan, away from husband and brother, and away from children and grandchildren as well, she had reached out in these letters, reaching for company and solace. The man closed his eyes, tears flowing once more down his face. He'd given up trying to hide them from the frozen faces staring out at him from the many, many pictures occupying the family shrine. Itama, Kawurama, Hashirama, Tuka, Nawaki, Kimitada, Hatsu, Kasumi, Dan, Kagami, Madara, Mito. Everyone to have ever been loved by a senju of the main family resided here, prayed over every morning by Tobirama. Tobirama clasped his hands together again, touching them to his forehead. He prayed and pleaded to Mito, begging her to be at peace, that he had finally heard her. That her words had finally reached him. But it felt useless. Tobirama ground his teeth against the ephemeralness of it all. He felt like he was desperately trying to reach a sister who was long gone, to take the hand she held out in patience for decades. And only now that he was desperately lunging for that hand, to tell her he was here, it was gone like dust. "Please forgive me," he whispered, his breathing ragged with the pain and burden he bore due to his own failure. He lowered his hands once more and opened his eyes to look upon the scroll sitting just in front of him. The one Mito had hidden. All of her letters had been hidden. But this one, more so. The scroll Torifu had handed him was short, a dying woman's wish that Tobirama live long when he finally returned and to live happily. But on the back, near invisible against the deep red dye of the scroll, was a storage seal array drawn in blood. One that could only be opened by Tobirama. Inside the blood seal were the many letters Mito had written that Tobirama had read slowly and carefully in the dead of night while Naruto slept. And it was with all the letters that a message was hidden. Every parting sentence, the one just above Mito's signature and wish for the best for Tobirama, was different. Always innocuous and tellingly of a random subject unrelated to what was written in the letter before. Given his memory and constant puzzling, it wasn't hard to put the message together with the last word of every parting sentence. Instructions on where to look in a plea for forgiveness for overstepping her bounds. On the back of the frame holding Kawurama's picture was an incredibly tiny seal scratched into the wood. A drop of his blood released the contents, a thin scroll, different from all the rest. Tobirama, it started, breaking Mito's pattern from fondly addressing him by the formal title he had always begged her to stop using. "Many years have come and gone since I last saw you. I had hoped there would come a time where I might welcome you home in person, but this scroll will have to do. Welcome home, Tobirama." Tobirama ran a finger over the carefully written words, coaxing Mito's voice from memory to hear the words as best he could. "Your journey and mission must be long and weary indeed, but your branch remains strong and hale. I often go to the gardens just to bring myself that comfort. Wheresoever you may have gone, I know you have gone full of life. I mourn that I will not be able to see you with these mortal eyes once more, but all roads, no matter where they wind, always come home. I know, come time, we will meet again in the Pure Lands. Tomorrow is the ceremony to transfer the Kyubi from myself to Kushina-chan. I mourn for her fate, alone as mine once was. Should you return while she still lives, could I ask you to look in on my niece? You would be able to answer her many questions and humor her love of ramen as you once humored me. Tomorrow, I go to see my beloved husband once more. He has waited a long time and we both know how he can be unattended. Whatever mess he may have made in the Pure Lands, I am excited to be with him once more. Him and my children and clan. I have missed them all so greatly. Tobirama pursed his lips and reached up to rub the tears from his eyes. He was happy Mito was finally able to rest and be reunited with her loved ones. But before I go, I must impart upon you grave news. I know not when you will return, but return you will I have full faith, and should the pieces in this twisted game still linger, you will be in danger without the protection of clan or the hat. Someone has disturbed Hashirama's rest. Indescribable fury filled him still as he reread that line for the 10th time. It never changed no matter how many times he looked over it. His Anija was buried in the old Senju compound next to Itama and Kaorama with Mito also buried at his side. The old compound was even more protected and warded than the current compound here in Konoha. Tobirama, Hashirama, Mito, and Tuka had trapped and sealed the old compound with its graveyard behind their deadliest traps, jutsus, trees, and seals, ensuring that only those of Senju blood could enter and exit. None would disturb their old land nor disrespect their dead. He had once made pilgrimages to the site twice, then 3 times, then 4 times a year to visit his brothers and cousin on their birthdays. Other Senju had done the same. The fact that not only had his brother's grave been robbed but that a grave robber had slipped past every single ward and trap that had been there and gotten away made him very uneasy and upset. If they could get into the graveyard, then they could get into the current Senju compound as well. I myself could not understand it. My own seals to prevent such a thing have not been set off or changed, and yet the tree that grew over Hashirama's grave was angry and unsettled, drawing me to examine the soil. I dared not commit such a crime, not even to see the damage, so I know not what was done, what was taken, or if he is even still there. I can only speculate what someone wishes due to with Hashirama's body or parts of it, but all of my conclusions are dark and atrocious. What more, I cannot even cry theft or injustice. The council is well aware that Senju and only Senju may enter those grounds and only Tsunade and I remain. With Tsunade gone, I cannot implicate her further in a crime I know she would never commit. Mito does not further that particular thought, but Tobirama certainly does. Neither Mito nor Tsunachan disturbed Hashirama's rest, of that he is certain. So that means someone else of extremely high skill in traps and seals found a way through, or an unknown person of Senju blood had done the job. Given the time frame, only those of mixed Senju blood would have been around at that time, married into other families, 2 or 3 generations into new family trees, and would not have passed the bloodline checks of Mito's seals. If it was as Mito laid out, leaving only she and a recently retired and departed Tsunade with permissions to enter the graveyard, then it was possible that whoever infiltrated the old Senju compound knew that. It was possible the infiltrator knew that even if their actions were discovered, nothing could be done due to where the blame would inevitably fall. Unfavorably and admittedly full of bias, Tobirama's thoughts turned suspiciously to his former students. Could they be responsible? Or know who is responsible? Shaking the thoughts, he refocused on the damning letter. There is also something else you must know. It is in regards to Kagami, your dear student. In the years past, Torifuku-kun and Kagami-kun have kept me company and visited like dutiful children. You should be proud of them, they bring you honor and they bring me joy. They would have been fine additions to the ancestral tree, but only upon your bow. But as you are probably aware already, Kagami has passed, though not from a mission. Tobirama felt his heart start to race again. Kagami came to me almost 10 years ago now, shaken, uncertain. When I asked what was bothering him, he told me Danzo had reached out to him again. Torifu and Kagami had a falling out with the other four not long after you vanished, cutting most ties. So it was a surprise to hear such news. And suspicious. Kagami told me Danzo was making demands and accusations. Baseless and slandering against him and his clan. When I pressed, Kagami admitted it was not the insults that bothered him as those were the same as before, but the demands. He told me Danzo had set his eyes on the Uchiha clan and was telling him to help him convince the Uchiha to spread their Kekkei Genkai and power. Preposterous. Nothing of that sort would ever happen. But Kagami told me he had a very bad feeling about it all. Something in the interaction had set him on edge. Not even a week later, he came to me in the dead of night, injured and missing an eye. Tobirama, Danzo has taken Kagami's eye and would have taken his life that night if he hadn't fled using his Mangekyo Sharingan. And I fear Danzo succeeded in taking Kagami, for he disappeared after fleeing my side, rushing to warn his clan. His student. Kagami. Taken and slain by his former teammate. Tobirama's teeth creaked from the force of silencing his furious scream. I tried speaking to the Uchiha, tried passing on the events Kagami shared with me. But before I could even step off of Senju land, Danzo appeared before me with a bandaged eye. Tobirama's fist trembled, they were clenched so hard. That same bandaged eye he'd seen himself. The same stolen eye from his student. He informed me of Kagami's tragic death, how his body could not be recovered. His family, his daughter and his wife were driven to distraction in their mourning and should not be disturbed. I knew a warning when I was given one, Tobirama, and every day since I have felt Umbu following me. They once followed me onto Senju land before I put blood wards in place. I am watched, left alive if only by the burden I am to pass on tomorrow. There is no doubt in my mind that if you return while Danzo and his co-conspirators still live, that you will be in danger. I beg of you to watch your step. Do not join your brother and I in the Pure Lands before it is truly your time, this I ask of you as a sister. Now, as your sister-in-law and wife of your brother, I order you to bring justice for these crimes. These men and women are no longer your students, Tobirama, and for what they have done to our loved ones, I am ordering you to see they pay tenfold for their audacity. Good hunting and favorable winds, little brother. We will meet again one day. Until then, your brother and I will watch over you. Mito Senju, carefully, Tobirama rolled the scroll back up and placed it in the seal tattoo just below the inside of his elbow. There it rested next to Naruto's adoption papers and his most dangerous, forbidden research. Mari lifted her head from her paws and shifted to rest it on his thigh. You reek of rage and sorrow, she observed in her rolling lyrical voice. He dropped a hand onto her head. It disappeared completely from view into her thick fur. A kitten of mine killed his littermate. And someone has violated my brother's final rest. The same person in both? Unknown. She let out a slow breath. Your rabid kitten will need to be put down and the kin stealer hunted down, she said, grim and cold. Yes. There was quiet until Mari spoke once more. This rabid kitten, were they the same that abandoned Naruto? Yes, he answered, the word strangled and stretched with a repressed snarl. Then you know what to do, kitten. Her ears twitched. The little one is coming, she warned, drawing Tobirama away from his dark thoughts enough to register his sensor abilities once more. His internal clock told him it was in the very late hours of the night as Naruto padded out of the hallway with Eri at his side. The boy yawned and rubbed his eyes, a blanket draped around shoulders to ward off the chilly draft. Ji-chan, he mumbled, blinking slowly awake. You weren't there when I woke up. Tobirama grimaced. He should have remained aware enough to feel his nephew's chakra spike in the panic of a nightmare and been there to soothe the boy. I'm sorry, he offered lamely through a tight throat. Naruto swayed and Eri braced herself against the boy so he wouldn't fall. You okay? He looked around, taking in how close he was sitting to the shrine with the many scrolls and candles and how Mari was laying behind him. Whatcha doin' sittin' in the dark? It's not good, believe it, he muttered as he stumbled closer only to pause when he was able to really get a good look at Tobirama. The man was sure he looked like a mess, his shirt mussed and crumbled, his hair sticking up in more wild directions than usual, and his face shiny with tear tracks. The boy frowned deeply and reached up to touch his cheek. What's wrong? He asked, sounding worried and alarmed. He didn't know how to answer that. How could he tell Naruto the truth and then explain so the child could understand the depth of how wrong things were? Could he even tell Naruto? What are all these? The boy asked, scowling down at the scroll as if they were all to blame for his uncle's state. He wasn't entirely wrong, just off base. These are letters, he rasped before clearing his throat. Letters from Mito. She left them behind for me to read. Understanding and deep sadness flickered across the boy's face. You miss her. Tobirama dropped his eyes and moved them over to Mito's picture in the shrine. I do. I miss them all. He waved a knuckle in a small motion at the array of pictures. Who are they? The man sighed and finally leaned back against Mari, scratching the great snow leopard behind a soft ear. Eri took the chance to wiggle her way under her mother's chin and bury herself between her mother's bulk and Tobirama's side. Naruto carefully leaned against his side as Tobirama stretched his legs out, cautious of the piles of scrolls. This is my family. Kawurama, the boy with the crossed scar on his cheek, was my younger brother just after me. Itama, the boy with the two-colored hair, was my youngest brother. I loved them dearly. I lost them both when I still young. They were your age and a little older. Naruto made a quiet sound and clung tightly to Tobirama's arm, tugging until the man unwound his crossed arms. Your brothers died when they were, but I thought kids had to go to the academy first. For they become ninja. Tobirama sighed. It wasn't always like that. It wasn't until we founded Konoha and made sure kids had to be genin before they were sent out on missions. I helped make the academy so everyone could get the same education as everyone else, clan background or no. The boy nodded against his arm and pointed again to the shrine. Who's that guy? Tobirama chuffed a small laugh, knowing Hashirama would have gotten a kick out of being called that guy instead of Shoden-sama, Hokage-sama, or Senju-sama. That is my Onija, Hashirama. He was the first Hokage. But he doesn't look like the big face on the mountain. The picture Tobirama and his family had chosen for the shrine was of Hashirama in his garden, covered in soil and dirt like a child. He was beaming at the camera with the full force of his cheer and happiness. All around him, bright flowers bloomed on a lush carpet of grass. Onija was the Hokage and he had to appear strong like the mountain, but Onija was more than just the Hokage. He was our brother, husband, father, friend. Tobirama smiled faintly, remembering all the times his Onija was his overdramatic, idiot self. A complete and utter fool that we loved. This picture best captured that. Naruto was quiet for a moment, still hugging his arm. I think I like this picture, he finally murmured. I do too. Tobirama turned his gaze to the picture of Madara. A picture taken in profile of the man as he was talking to another of his clansmen. Unaware that he was being observed, Madara looked open and attentive, engaging the other Uchiha with the corner of his lip quirked up and his hands caught mid-gesture. That is Madara Uchiha, Onija's best friend. Onija loved him very much. His nephew frowned. Did you love him? Astute child. The Senju paused before slowly answering. I think I could have. If I hadn't made him hate me. When the blonde boy looked up at him, he continued. Before Konoha was founded, the Senju and Uchiha clans had been fighting for a very long time. It was a long and bloody war that my brothers and I had been born into. That Madara and his brothers had been born into. By the time we were all adults, it was only I and Anija and Madara and his little brother, Izuna. On the battlefield only Madara could match my brother in battle and only I and Izuna could match each other. We fought and fought and fought. Tobirama closed his eyes, recalling the days and nights where he was always ready to go to battle, to face eyes of glowing red and fight tooth and nail to bring as many of his clansmen home. And in one fight, I won. I struck Izuna down, wounding him. We learned days later that Izuna slowly succumbed to his wounds. He took a deep breath, swallowing. It wasn't a graceful death. Nothing honorable or kind about it. Finally gathering his courage, he looked down into the open and clear blue eyes of his sprout and silently begged the boy not to judge him too harshly for his actions, however much he might deserve it. I killed Madara's little brother, he confessed, his Itama or Kawarama. His Naruto. The boy's eyes widened and Tobirama nodded. And he could never strike me back because peace was made after that. The kind of hate and resentment that poisons a man, it doesn't leave room for much else. Naruto sniffled and blinked rapidly. Did you ever say you were sorry? He asked and Tobirama sucked in a sharp breath. He blew it out slowly before nodding tightly. I did. I knew if I were in his position, I would not have nearly the same restraint as he did. If someone were to take you from me right now, I wouldn't hesitate to slaughter and burn them to ash. He leaned down and gently brushed a kiss over Naruto's hair. I approached him one night after a bad day of work and I made a deal with him. I told him, if he beat me in a fight, he could kill me. Except, Tobirama knew he was never a match for Hashirama or Madara. Given time to prepare and proper motivation, he could give Madara a run for his money, but with Madara driven towards something, there was hardly a force in the world that could stop him. I lost, Tobirama said, shushing his nephew when he clung on tighter. Eri unburied herself and crawled over Tobirama's lap to lay her front half in Naruto's lap, purring and nosing his chin. I lost, but Madara could not kill me. Tobirama could remember the kunai pressed to his side, pressing enough to break skin. It would be irony to kill him with the same wound that killed Izuna. Why not? The child rested his cheek against Tobirama's arm, apparently tired of tilting his head back to look at him. I mean, I'm really happy you're here, believe it. But I'd be really mad too if someone hurt you. Killed you. I'm not sure, he answered honestly. He laid his head back against Mari's side, feeling drained and tired. Maybe he didn't want to risk the village by killing me. Maybe he didn't want to hurt Hashirama by killing me. Maybe he knew killing me wouldn't change anything. Huh? What do you mean? Killing me wouldn't bring back Izuna. Killing me wouldn't fix anything. What would he be left with if he had killed me? His friend in grief, a village against him? Without a home, without a brother, what would he have done? He mused aloud before sighing. Well, he did actually find out what he would do. It was a heavy weight on his shoulders. Tobirama had approached Madara in the hopes of forming some kind of resolution. He'd hoped he wouldn't die, but he'd made arrangements just in case. He'd hoped that whatever the outcome, something would change and maybe that something would be positive, something different from Madara disappearing for days at a time and coming back sullener, more depressed than before. But in the end, not even 2 days later Madara was gone. Madara did leave the village, Tobirama said. And he came back with the Kyuubi. Naruto stiffened like a board. The Kyuubi, he whispered in horror, his hand dropping to his stomach. Tobirama reached over to touch the hand. No, this was not your birthday. This was the first time the Kyuubi attacked the village. Anija went out to fight Madara and the Kyuubi and won, killing Madara while Mito sealed the Kyuubi inside of herself, becoming the first Jinchuriki. They were silent for quite some time. Long enough that Tobirama wondered if Naruto had fallen asleep again with the rocking of Mari's breathing. The pair of snow leopards certainly kept them warm enough with how they sandwiched them. Hearing his nephew sigh cleared up any confusion. That's a sad story, he decided and Tobirama hummed in agreement. And it started because of the war between your two clans? The adult thought for a moment before nodding slowly. Yes, I think that's right. If we hadn't been born in a time of war, we wouldn't have had to fight each other or kill each other. Madara and Hashirama would have been friends from the beginning, all of our little brothers would have possibly been alive, and maybe we would have all gotten along together. Our own little village. He turned to peer down at the boy. Madara was a good man, Sprout. He was hurt deeply by the war and unable to heal. But he loved his clan more than anything, and he too, like a ninja, wanted peace. They both wanted to create a village where kids didn't have to die anymore. Where people could be safe. Tobirama did admire Madara, and during times where he was really pensive and honest with himself, he would admit that he mourned for the man and the pain he must have felt. He ultimately turned against the village and became a threat, but out of his old Hokage hat, out of his Senju clan head status, Tobirama could maybe begin to understand the man. It was a dark and sad path to look down. I don't want that. The man blinked out of his morose thoughts and refocused on Naruto. You don't want what? Naruto tilted his head back with a deep frown. I don't want to love somebody and then let them die and be hurt like Madara. I don't want to feel so angry and mad and sad that I hurt my friend or my village, you know? Tobirama watched as he sunk his teeth into his bottom lip. Like, I'm mad at Gigi. He lied to me and kept stuff from me, and Naruto blinked quickly, and stuff. But I don't want to hurt him. The Senju crooned low in his throat at his Sprout's desperate look. I believe you, he assured softly. Naruto's chin wobbled dangerously as he tucked it into his chest. I don't want this. He pointed a finger to the shrine. They're all gone, aren't they? Yes. They are. And you miss them. Like you miss Mito. I do. And doesn't that hurt? Naruto asked, his voice high and thin. He lifted his hand and patted his chest. Here. Tobirama hummed and Mari took up purring, trying to offer comfort to the pair of them. It does hurt, he admitted quietly. More than you can know right now. I don't want that, the boy burst out, startling Eri. I don't want that hurt. I don't want to feel that. Naruto breathed hard into the quiet stillness of the house, Mari's brief purring quiet again. Tobirama mulled over how to respond because while he could understand what the child was saying, he could not allow it to stay. To avoid that pain would mean you avoid people and the bonds you could form with those people, Tobirama said gravely. To avoid that pain, the one here in your heart, the one you already feel, Naruto hiccuped a sob and squeezed his eyes shut, would mean you could never know another person's love, their joys, their strengths. It would mean you would never have the honor of having someone lean on you in a time of weakness because they know you would care for them. It would mean that what we have between us couldn't be allowed to continue. He thumbed away some of the tears slipping out of Naruto's eyes. Naruto, I have lost so many people and felt the claws of grief try to rip my heart out to give to the Shinigami. But I protected it, and I healed it, so I could still have it for when I met you. Shiny blue eyes cracked open and Tobirama leaned to rest his forehead against his nephew's. My brothers, my sisters, my cousin, my family. They're gone and I miss them so much and it hurts, but the joy and love I get from knowing you, from holding you close, is worth it. I would never, ever give you up because you are the very thing that takes the pain away. Naruto cried, how can I miss people I never even knew? Gently, Tobirama drew Naruto from his side and into his lap. Eri was quick to move out of the way, circling anxiously before pressing close to his and Naruto's side. Because you did know them. Whether you remember or not, you know your mother's voice and your father's hold. You know their love because you would not be here today if it weren't for them. And that is more than enough to grieve over. Tobirama held the boy as he cried himself to sleep, shushing him and murmuring small promises of love and comfort. Eri purred and licked the boy's face, drawing wet giggles as she purred loudly in his ears. Mari watched over them all, curling tighter as they fell asleep as the sun touched the horizon. That afternoon, a new picture joined the shrine. An orange frame around a picture of a grinning Uzumaki and a love-struck Namikaze. Every morning after that, Tobirama felt a tiny body kneel next to his and heard a soft voice offering prayers to those who stood watch over them. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Want early audio-only versions? Join me on Patreon, link in description. I'm Fox Sage. See you next time.